Massive update for the Ripple community as Coinbase on XRP is crashing to a new all-time low. And with supply on American exchanges reaching levels we have never seen before, we're going to highlight for our listeners how the supply shock we've been predicting is on the horizon for the XRP community. Now, on July 4th, 2025, Coinbase had nearly 1 billion units of XRP worth over $3 billion US dollars. Today, we are looking at less than 35 million units worth less than $100 million. And the trillion-dollar question in the room today is, who's moving this XRP and why is this important for the XRP price chart? We're going to be breaking that down all throughout today's episode. We're also going to show our listeners how the brand new Rex Osprey ETF hit the American market starting this week. And with historic inflows being tracked on these public markets, we're going to highlight the total inflows that XRP community can anticipate heading into the back end of 2025. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Good Evening Crypto, your favorite crypto news related channel. If you enjoy this content, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe as you're going to get an update every single day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I wanted to start off today's episode before we get into the supply shock, addressing where all this new demand for XRP may be coming from behind the scenes. Eric Balanchunas out of Bloomberg reported that the first ever XRP ETF trading in the USA reporting nearly $40 million in day one trading volume. This doubled Dogecoin's volume of 17 million, making it a top 5 performing ETF on the year. Now, out of 710 ETF launches in 2025, the XRP ETF had the highest daily trading volume of any product in any market. So it goes to show massive institutional demand is happening behind the scenes. And it's not just us who's reporting on this data. There are dozens of companies watching how these XRP ETF performs so they can track that for their own clients in their own portfolios. And anybody who's been watching Good Evening Crypto understands October is the month we've all been waiting for. With nearly a dozen XRP ETF applications sitting at the SEC right now, starting on October 18th, Grayscale may have their XRP ETF approved, followed by 21 shares, Bitwise, Canary Capital, Wisdom Tree, and Franklin Templeton, all happening before October of 2025. And so why is this more relevant for our listeners to understand than ever? All of these different products launching at the same time is going to create more institutional demand than we have ever seen before for XRP. And we have people like Kevin Cage giving us some reasonable inflows that we can anticipate for the XRP project. Now, when Ethereum initially launched their ETF in the beginning of 2024, we saw inflows totaling $26 billion after 1 year of this product circulating in the open market. If we anticipate something similar for XRP, we are looking at nearly $8.83 billion worth of inflows in assets under management for these ETF products alone. So this leads me to believe that when we have these institutional buyers stepping into the American market and purchasing XRP at a rate that we've never seen before, we are going to have a really simple equation of increase in demand, same supply, increase in price here in 2025, guys. And if you're enjoying this content, smash that like button, leave some thoughts underneath the video. Do you believe the XRP ETF will create the supply shock we've all been waiting for? That's what I'm going to break down right now before we kick it over to our special guest, Dom. Why are we looking at so many different products already being filed in the American markets? Because there are thousands, if not millions of Americans who want access to this new asset class. And when companies like Bitwise, Grayscale, Franklin Templeton, Canary Capital, Wisdom Tree, they've got millions of clients all across the United States. And starting in mid-October, all of those clients will have access to XRP. So there are going to be days after these products are launched where we say, oh, Grayscale had 50 million in volume, and Bitwise had 25 million in volume, and Franklin Templeton had 75 million in volume, and Grayscale had 65 million in volume. That leads us to over $200 million in daily volume. Now you can add 5, 6, 7 more products on top of those. That is the demand that we've been waiting for. Dominic, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
No, I think that's a great observation. And look, all these ETFs are coming out next month, right? They're set to come out. And in order to get exposure through the ETFs, the underlying funds need to buy XRP. So it could be coming from the Coinbase accounts. It could not be, but they have to get it from somewhere, which is ultimately going to have a big effect on the supply.
I think it's extremely likely, and that we're already watching this supply be drained behind the scenes. What are we witnessing right now? Coinbase is sitting at an all-time low for XRP in supply under cold wallet custody. Now, this is really important because Coinbase has a product called Coinbase Prime, where BlackRock is a partner and Grayscale is a partner, and there's dozens of other massive financial companies who are partners of Coinbase Prime. The reason this may impact the XRP price chart is because all of this supply may be going to the issuers of these ETFs. We have evidence for BlackRock actually doing this 2 years ago. When BlackRock initially filed for their Bitcoin ETF back in 2023, it turns out that they were accumulating the asset 12 months before the approval. So my rational and logical opinion here is that whether it's Franklin Templeton, Grayscale, Bitwise, could be any ETF issuer in the American markets, if they think their product is going to be approved, they will need spot XRP to back these shares of the XRP ETF that should be and will be trading live on the New York Stock Exchange, on the NASDAQ, and they're going to be promoted to millions of customers all across America. And we've been focused on the American markets for that very reason here in 2025. But I think there's a clip all of our listeners should be aware of that highlights just how much the American markets have changed for crypto investors.
They are reversing a lot of what you did. And how are you feeling about what they're doing now?
So I'm very proud of what we accomplished.
And the crypto community is ecstatic not to have you there anymore and to have him there. Looking back on it, I mean, do you think that was the right call?
Yes, I think.
Because look, now we have this like burgeoning industry and there's so much more innovation and leadership in the US.
And a lot more capital coming into it.
There may be more capital in terms of the interest in the public. The public is interested. I get that. But for investors.
You think this is dangerous, what they're doing?
Put aside Bitcoin, but most of the other tokens are not tied to any fundamentals. Like Warren Buffett would say, what are the goods? What are the revenues? What are they selling? And so forth.
This was the person who prevented not only Ripple from expanding their business model inside the United States, but from getting crypto regulation passed inside the US as well, guys. If you're excited that Gary Gensler's not the SEC commissioner, smash that like button, leave a comment underneath the video. But one thing is absolutely clear. Crypto is here to stay in the USA, whether it's Howard Lutnick, whether it's Scott Bessent, or whether it's our sitting president, Donald Trump. All three of these key political components have come together and acknowledged the fact that companies like Ripple, like Chainlink, and even like Ethereum are here to stay and will play an important role in the American economy going forward. Well, we got more evidence for that earlier this week as the United States government and the United Kingdoms deepen their financial collaboration. And of course, Ripple was in the room. So key executives, including Scott Bessent and UK's Chancellor Rachel Reeves, were meeting with industry executives, including Bank of America, Barclays, Citibank, Circle, Coinbase, and Ripple. And they were discussing the tokenization of real-world assets, as well as stablecoins expanding US dollar dominance. Well, here's what a Ripple representative had to say about the meeting. The managing director of Europe at Ripple stated, the plan and cooperation has the potential to set the template for international cooperation in the industry. With its dynamic economy, deep capital markets, and extensive talent pool, the UK has been long one of the world's leading global financial centers and is now poised to become a leading digital asset and innovation hub. Increased international collaboration between the US and UK will further serve to unlock the economic potential of blockchain technologies in both countries. So once again, the most important meetings in the entire world, and Ripple is sitting in the room. There was another example of this earlier this week where Cardano and Charles Hoskinson, as well as Ripple representatives, met with the American Senate Banking Committee in Washington, D.C. So that happened on Tuesday. They also met with Scott Bessent and Rachel Reeves, the UK Chancellor, on Tuesday. And I think the most important thing is what they're discussing. They're discussing the tokenization of real-world assets, which is far bigger than any asset class that you can imagine. Stocks, bonds, equities, ownership rights, voting rights, all of this can be tokenized and implemented on public blockchains. And I think in some way, shape, or form, they're giving us the answers to the test by showing us who's allowed to speak in these key meetings. Time and time again, it's the Ripple and XRP community that gets to celebrate the fact that the US is now working with industry executives. What are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and like I said before on the show, I think Scott Bessent, right? He's one of the most important people in the crypto space right now. He's the one pushing the narrative. He's the one in Trump's ear, in the administration's ear, working with David Sachs and all the pro-crypto people in the administration pushing the legislation forward. And going back to your comments on Gary Gensler, so he made an important comment, right? He said that crypto, excluding Bitcoin, is not tangible, right? So XRP, Solana, all these coins, but we know this is not true, right? It's tied to volume. So you can look at the volume of coins, right? And you can attribute that to performance, right? The coins have different use cases, right? That's another tangible aspect you can evaluate. The amount of adoption and, the use case of fighting inflation from the dollar. And now that crypto is tied to equity markets, right? So you can use it to play equity. So there's so many different dynamics now in crypto that, he can make that claim maybe 5 years ago, right? Before the adoption is taking place. But in 2025, I just think he's dead wrong. And the audience knows that he's wrong. So I think that was a really bad claim that he tried to make there.
I completely agree. And we've seen a huge capitulation from people who were anti-crypto now speaking positively of the industry, whether it's BlackRock's CEO or Jamie Dimon out of JP Morgan. Key executives are acknowledging that crypto is here to stay, and they're investing in the asset class as well. Now, I wanted to show our listeners some key industry leaders that are going to be speaking at Ripple's Swell event this fall. So when Gary Gensler tells you, yeah, the public may be interested and the capital markets may be interested, but it doesn't matter, it's almost like he's not speaking English at this point. Nothing he's saying makes sense. And I think that representatives from many of the key companies that I'm about to show you wouldn't be speaking at Ripple if it wasn't beneficial to their own business model. So we're going to cover that right now. Now, as you guys can tell, key executives from the NASDAQ, BNY Mellon, Citibank, BlackRock, Fidelity, Franklin Templeton, JP Morgan, CME Group, Moody's, State Street, and DBS, as well as dozens of other companies, are going to be flying into New York City to attend the Ripple Swell event, which takes place in the fall of 2025. Now, our listeners know, because they're privy to this information, many of these companies have already collaborated with Ripple. BNY Mellon is custodying Ripple's stablecoin. DBS and Franklin Templeton are working on tokenized assets. JP Morgan has publicly acknowledged the success of Ripple and the outstanding balance sheet that they've been able to create here heading into the back end of 2025, guys. So you catalyze all these different things. We already had the Fed reducing rates. We're headed into what many people are calling, quote unquote, alt season. We've got these ETFs set to be approved. We've got Wall Street showing interest in a way that we've never seen before. We've got the Clarity Act being developed right now, and the Genius Act for stablecoins having already been passed inside the United States. And now our listeners can add the icing on the cake, the supply shock happening on American exchanges. We may be witnessing the moment that we've all been waiting for. And we could be looking at an XRP price chart that outperforms the rest of the asset class heading into the back end of 2025. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all in the next one.